Welcome to Hartford NEXT Neighborhood Training Institute. It's our city's episode number 3 with Christopher Hayes, the Director of the Department of Public Works. I'm Marion Griffin, Board Co-Chair for Hartford NEXT, the coalition of Hartford's and NRZs, or Neighborhood Revitalization Zones. Today's host is Carrie Shea, Co-Chair of Frog Hollow's NRZ. And Carrie, thank you for hosting today's episode.
My pleasure. Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for coming here. As Marion said, my name is Carrie Shea, and along with Marcus Ordonez and Rhodey Genie, I am a co-chair of the Frog Hollow NRZ. Unfortunately, Marcus and Rhodey couldn't be here this morning, but I'm going to do my best. I want to also thank you, everyone who is watching on YouTube. The primary goal of this series is to help us understand how the city works and how we can participate in that work to make a better and better Hartford. I'm going to start today by asking our guest, Chris Hayes, a number of questions, and then take a few questions from our in-person audience. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, you can place your questions in the YouTube chat, and I'll ask those questions for you too. Hartford NEXT is a coalition of 13 neighborhood revitalization zones, or NRZs for short, and the City of Hartford. It was formed in 1997 as Hartford 2000, and its purpose is to bring together our diverse NRZs for the common good of the residents of Hartford. Frog Hollow is a historic neighborhood just south and west of the capital. It has been home to wave after wave of immigrants since the early 1800s. Today, there are about 39,000 people living in Frog Hollow, and roughly 40% of this population was born outside of the country and migrated here from Latin America, primarily. We have a very low rate of owner occupancy, somewhere around 6 or 7%, which is the cause of some issues that we'll get to today. And at last count, we have 50 vacant and blighted properties within our neighborhood boundaries, which is a main focus of the Frog Hollow NRZ. We also have one of the most intact historic districts in the city and some long-standing institutions, including the Hispanic Health Council, Hartford Public Library Park Street branch at the Lyric, Hartford Hospital and Children's Hospital, Trinity College, and some really beautiful parks and cemeteries. Our meetings are held the third Tuesday of every month at 5:30 at the library on the corner of Park and Broad. We serve dinner and provide childcare during the meeting, and we welcome your participation in person or virtually. NRZs across the state of Connecticut were created through a 1995 act of the Connecticut State Legislature to improve the quality of life of residents by giving neighborhoods the tools to address blighted properties. Today, Hartford NEXT and the NRZs address a broad range of impacts to our quality of life. Hartford NEXT serves as the collective voice of Hartford residents and stakeholders working to strengthen and grow the Hartford community. Through its Neighborhood Training Institute, Hartford NEXT provides programs to educate and empower the residents of Hartford with the goal of increasing resident involvement in our city. Today's episode of It's Our City will focus on the Department of Public Works with Director Chris Hayes. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Carrie. Good morning.
Good morning. So we, of course, have some questions prepared, but before we got into that, we thought it'd be terrific if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and about your department.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been working in the city for 18 years now, almost 19 years, and I've been a resident of the City of Hartford for 15 of those years. The past 6, I've been a homeowner in the Southwest neighborhood. And I fell in love with Hartford when I first came here to work for Riverfront Recapture. And that was where I spent the first 18 years of my professional life, rented a number of different units in the West End, and then found a very special home in the Southwest 6 years ago. The connecting to the Connecticut River, the park management, and just the fact that Riverfront is the shepherd of what I like to think of as the backyard of the city. Made it a very special and rewarding place to work. And then when I was called up and asked to help the new administration when there was a vacancy, I was very proud and excited to come work with the new administration and all the great employees here at the City of Hartford.
Terrific. Well, we're thrilled to have you here with the City of Hartford in that position. And let me jump right in by asking sort of a big picture question about vision. And what is your vision for the department overall?
Sure, and before I answer that,
Yeah.
just to give folks a sense of the size and breadth of
please.
Public Works. You know, this is a department that currently has 232 employees. And now I brought my notes so I don't forget any of the divisions. You know, we do our streets division, which maintains streets, does plowing, handles potholes. We have waste and recycling, our sanitation team. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. The parks division, the blight remediation team, who handles the actual cleanup efforts around blight. They don't do the enforcement side. Then we have the forestry division. We have our fleet and equipment services, which takes care of all city vehicles outside of the fire department, whether they're police vehicles or heavy-duty loaders that we use in the yard at DPW. The golf courses fall under DPW, as well as cemeteries. We have the engineering division and the architecture division. We have traffic engineers, flood control, which speaks to holding back the Connecticut River during times of flood stage, and handling all the levees that protect the city. And then we also have a permits division for any road cuts or any work that's happening underground in the roads. And we also have facilities. So our team maintains all city buildings as well.
It's an incredible breadth that your department has, and I'm sure you overlap quite a bit with other departments in coordination, both at the city level and the state level. Can you talk a little bit, if you will, so you have all these, in some ways connected, but also disparate duties under.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about some of your, challenges and what's been, you took this job on, you came from a nonprofit, a big nonprofit that was dealing with a pretty big expanse of space here in the City of Hartford, but you took this job on, and what sort of caught you by surprise?
Sure, and I want to answer your last question too. So I'll
know.
start with vision, and then I'll go right. I'll roll right in.
Great.
to,
I'm sorry the questions are coming
it's
sort of
okay.
fast and furious.
No, this is great. So vision-wise, what I find so important about Public Works is that we are the department that touches every resident of the city, whether it's through sanitation or folks enjoying the parks, whether they have a problem, there's a light out on a city street that needs to be repaired or replaced, to dealing with, interested residents who want to see improvements in areas of the parks, or it's a city tree has caused a problem and we need the forestry division. We end up interacting with every single resident. We really end up interacting with every single business owner and every visitor of the city. And I think that's what makes our department unusual, is those daily touches that we end up having. And so generally speaking, my vision for the department is that we want to be the department that welcomes people to the city and is the first department people think of as a helping hand in improving the lives of residents. Living here the 15 years I have and being a homeowner, I've seen personally some of the challenges and the quality of life issues. And I feel that though enforcement sometimes will solve some of these issues, a lot of these items fall into the work Public Works does do and can do in the future. So that's my general vision of it all. And now, speaking to challenges, for me, what has been the most eye-opening is the financial challenges. with a city that currently cannot bond and is trying to still do all the work necessary, we have a number of areas that historically we just haven't been able to keep up in. Currently, the DPW fleet is at roughly 85% of that fleet is past its useful life.
So this is snow plows, trucks, front loaders, that sort of thing.
Exactly, exactly. Sanitation trucks, so 85%. And to be able to do a standard municipal turnover for a fleet of our size, we would need to spend $4.5 million a year to be able to push those trucks through on that 10-year basis. And just so people get a sense of what a useful life is by municipal standards, that's 8 to 10 years of work life and up to 40% of the original purchase price reinvested in the piece of equipment for maintenance. So that's a big challenge. And then, you know, you look at the roads, and we get plenty of calls around roads where potholes are, conditions. You know, if we were the gold standard, which is milling and paving streets every 10 years, so 10% of the city every year, that would cost $14 million. Currently, we're only able to spend 2.7. So we're trying to be creative with the dollars we have and try to do the most we can for our residents, but the streets, the sidewalks, those needs are items that I think are a great challenge and a necessary investment.
Right, right. And what is the total budget for the DPW?
Yeah, it's just over 20 million right now for the operating
modest,
side.
yeah.
Now that doesn't include CIP, capital improvement projects, which are any new builds or renovations, and that doesn't include sundries. So all the power bills, water bills for all city-owned buildings all fall within that sundries budget as well. That all comes through DPW.
Right. And how's your staffing? I know a lot of departments that residents interact with have really suffered from the inability to staff up to 100%. Where are you with staffing?
We're over 90%,
Oh,
so
very
we're
good.
well staffed there. However, what I would say is 10 years ago, we had a staff of 460.
Oh, wow.
And our issue is, I think, getting up to a level where the city can afford to have a better staffed public works department.
Right.
You know, we are short. We don't have enough engineers. We don't have enough maintainers to get all of the daily tasks done that we want to get done, and to have the city be at a level that you know, we want it to be at.
Right. So, as you said, a lot of what you do really touches, you know, individual residents. I too am a homeowner in Hartford, which I actually love being. I live in such a beautiful street and such a beautiful neighborhood. My street has a very high percentage of homeowners who owner occupants who are there on site shoveling, sweeping, raking, and maintaining our properties. As I mentioned earlier in my introduction, the neighborhood of Frog Hollow has a particularly low owner occupancy rate. And a lot of the owners, I think is very fair to say, are absentee owners, the so-called investors who buy buildings in our city, often because the price of entry is very low. And then we rarely see them. We have some great laws on our books regarding blight and litter and so forth. We have a hard time keeping up with it. And I think a lot of folks then turn to DPW and say, our streets are dirty, our streets are dirty. Let's talk trash.
Please.
Tell us a little bit about this incredible problem. I know your predecessor, when we asked him what one of his biggest challenges was, he said litter and trash. It sounds like we were talking before the program started, it sounds like you have some really innovative ideas about how to deal with this.
Well, I'm not sure if I would call it innovative, but what I will say is this, just to give folks a sense of what the department is doing and what we hope to do. We sweep our streets more than any other municipality in the state of Connecticut. So I know a number of residents are starting to work with the new parking bans and the safe street zones for sanitation days, so that one, our sanitation trucks can get to the cans, but also so our street sweepers can sweep the streets. So that's something we hope will allow for the streets to be cleaner, because now we won't be missing areas of streets or missing whole streets altogether because cars are parked along the gutter line. One of the challenges that we have as a department and within our sanitation division is contamination in our recycling. People are putting trash in the recycling. And so with that, the department is currently working with Corporation Counsel and the Mayor's Office to allow us to start to use our 4 solid waste inspectors we have in the city for not only illegal dumps but also to educate the homeowners or residents, because they don't always own the home, of what should or should not be in their recycling bin. If we can, our sanitation team is very good at spotting contaminated recycling before it gets dumped into the truck. And what we want to do is take that next step of being able to go and have a conversation with the residents and explain it's not an overflow trash can. Here's what can go in, here's what can go out. And through a process which would end up with a fine if, after multiple attempts, it wasn't rectified. Because right now the city is spending between $7,000 and $12,000 a month on fines for contaminated recycling when it goes to the recycling plant.
Wow, that's incredible. And my understanding is not only do you incur the fine, but the contaminated recycling has to then go to the dump, if
Correct.
you will,
It then becomes trash.
Right. And there are no active dumps in Hartford anymore, are there?
Well,
Where does our trash go?
all waste ends up being a transfer station for us.
Okay.
So our trash goes to a location in Hartford, but it's not the old Mira plant, the old garbage burning power plant.
Right.
And then it's shipped off from there. Our recycling goes to a process facility outside of the city where it's processed and then again shipped out. So there's a lot of double handling.
Right, and so we're
that way.
paying, the taxpayers are essentially paying to ship our garbage to, I believe it is Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
And so it's traveling, yeah. So
And-
definitely something we want to focus on.
And to that, I'm excited to say we have been in talks with the DEEP, the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. They've put forth some new grants, and they're looking to do some pilot programs around food waste composting, for lack of a better term. And our hope is that we can be found eligible for one of these pilots and actually start to have the compost bin, a third bin. So your food scraps can go in there. Some estimates coming out of New York City state that up to 60% of the waste in a trash can is actually food waste that could be diverted, composted, and not go to the dump fees, or what we call the tip fees, that we're paying to dispose of our waste.
Right, tremendous. Composting is my language. I have a composting bin in my backyard, and I would say easily a third of my garbage is compostable and makes it into the bin. I think we probably put in one bag per week. So we're doing our share in the Shea Parker household to keep the trash down, because I know it's an incredible burden on the city. Can we talk about snow removal? That's
Sure.
something too that residents who walk on the sidewalks care about, even if they aren't property owners, and property owners have to be more aware of what their responsibilities are.
And from a language perspective, for us,
Please.
we have plowing and then we have snow removal. For
Okay.
us, snow removal is the operation we do at least 24 hours after the storm, and it's where we are physically trucking out snow from those large major artery roads of the city, especially in the downtown or up on Albany Avenue, areas where there is no place to put the snow. So that is what snow removal is for
Wow.
us. And that's an operation that can take up to 4 teams, and it can go on multiple nights. It's done during the third shift between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. And so that's snow removal, and I don't think that's what we were talking about. But snow plowing, absolutely. Is there something specific, or do you want me to just talk about what our general operation is?
If you would talk about your general operation, and then also what where DPW sort of leaves off and homeowners should be taking up.
Absolutely. So from snow plowing, we have one snow commander. Under that snow commander, for street plowing, we have 6 snow captains, because we have divided the city up into 6 districts. Each district has 6 plow trucks, and those plow trucks will first handle what we call the A routes, which are the major thoroughfares or routes to hospitals, the large major streets, and then when they are passable, we then move out into the neighborhoods. I should add that before it snows, if it's not a storm where we start with rain and turn to snow, the day before the event, we have 2 brine trucks that are filled with, we call it pickle juice, but it is salt water, and we'll spray that on all bridges and all hills, and that helps take out that initial snowfall and reduces, one, the amount of ice compaction that occurs to the asphalt and adheres, but it also will kind of eliminate that first inch of snow. And then when snow starts falling, our team will go out, our plow trucks will go out and pre-treat with salt, which can just be straight calcium chloride, or we also will use magnesium chloride, which is the green stuff you see out on the roads. It's important to note, because I know we've gotten the call before, we don't plow until we see at least 2 inches of accumulation. And sometimes folks will see our big plow trucks out there without a plow on, even though it's going to be an 8-inch or 10-inch storm, and they just see them adding the salt to the roads, and we get the calls, what's going on? Well, at that time, as the parking bans are still being enforced and not all the cars are off the roads, we have roads where city plow trucks with the plow on can't fit down the street.
Interesting, yeah.
So what our operation, how it goes is we pre-treat with that salt, and then when the pre-treat operation is complete and we're expecting to be close to that 2-inch mark, the trucks will return to the operations yard and operations center, hook up the plows, and then we'll go out and start a plowing operation. Now that's going to go through the full extent of the storm, and then as the snowfall tapers off, we will bring in a full sidewalk operation, which has a sidewalk commander, 3 sidewalk captains, and then numerous employees under each sidewalk captain as we divide the city into 3 districts, north, central, and south. And they are hitting any public sidewalk, any city-owned property, and trying to improve the efforts. When it comes to the residents, it is shoveling their sidewalks and their driveways. Where we always run into a challenge is the sidewalk that inevitably gets filled by snow by a plow when they haven't finished the roads. And that's a challenge in the city of Hartford, because that little area of grass between the sidewalk and the road is called the snow shelf. And that area for us is, in theory, where the snow goes. But if you have 8 or 10 inches of snow, it will easily spill into the sidewalk, which is still the responsibility of the residents, unfortunately. So what we try to tell folks is, please wait until all the snow has fallen so that you're not out there shoveling 3 times. It's imperfect. We also don't have enough manpower to clear all the sidewalks in the city. One area that is often missed, which I think is interesting, is the city has taken over, at this point, 207 properties due to tax liens or whatever else. We have a small crew, that blight remediation team. Not only are they cleaning up the illegal dumps, but they also are going in and they have to shovel, and they also have to maintain those 207 properties.
Right.
That team is only 6 strong right now. So it's a small but mighty force. So that's the other piece. So we will continue, the sidewalk operation for hours after the final flake has fallen.
Wow, that's tremendous. And thank you for that detailed explanation, because I think we all sort of look out our windows in wonderment as the snow is falling and get a little excited when we see that first snowplow, but didn't understand how coordinated the effort is.
And the other piece I would add, I think it's important because it's different than other cities. With how lean our operation is, we only have 1 set of plow drivers. So we have enough plow drivers and a couple backups if someone was sick, but the same person who is plowing that first flake of snow is going to be the person plowing that last flake. So we also have to be sensitive to, are they getting enough rest? I mean, these are very large and quite frankly, dangerous machines.
Right.
And so while the state will say, don't crowd the plow, I would say the same thing about when you're shoveling your driveway. Step back, give the plow driver some space as they are trying to clear the street.
Right.
Because they can't always see you, especially if it's nighttime or if the snowfall is heavy.
Right, right. That's good advice. And I hate to get off this topic without noting that homeowners, as you said, are responsible for shoveling their sidewalks and driveways. And there are fines for folks who don't do it and put other people at risk.
Yep, up to $99, and I believe it's 12 hours after the completion of the storm.
Terrific. So we're about at the halfway mark. I'm going to ask one more question that came in from a resident, and then I'm going to open it up to folks here and see we can kind of take it from there. So you mentioned in the beginning all of the different duties and responsibilities of DPW. Oh, actually, I have 2 questions.
That's okay.
Okay, and then we'll open it up. But on this one, from a resident, we're very proud of our city, and like any city, cities have sort of gateways and entrances, gateways to neighborhoods, gateways to the city, and with the extensive highway system we have here, quite often our gateway is a highway exit or entrance ramp. Of course, the Department of Transportation, I would imagine most of these ramps and so forth fall under them. But also, then they attach to streets where DPW is, so I'm sure there's a lot of this going on. But the entrances and exits are particularly sort of littered up and often unmaintained. Because these are the entrances to our city, I guess the writer or resident felt, they kind of deserve special attention. How do you work with the DOT, if you were to rate how the DOT is going on a scale of 1 to 10 with those, what would you say?
Well, I'm not going to rate the DOT because they are a valued partner in a lot of projects we do, and we have a number of streets like Albany Avenue and New Britain Avenue that are DOT responsibilities. And as someone who came into this job in January and was surprised at the breadth and some of the challenges we have, I wouldn't want to begin to speculate on what the challenges are for the DOT. But the entry corridors are a concern and an issue. We do have a good relationship with DOT maintenance and speaking with them when we have concerns. And my goal over however long the residents and the mayor allow me to continue to be here is to grow our blight remediation team. It is a great asset to our department, and I see where they could aid in traffic islands and in some of these highway entrances where safe and acceptable. We are not going to go up onto highway on and off ramps. That's outside of our purview. But working on some of these corridors is an important piece that currently we don't have adequate staffing for. We're very lucky with some of our street cleaning initiatives that the city has partnered historically and continues to partner with Open Hearth Works, a division of Open Hearth, the homeless shelter downtown here, at training programs where they're going out and picking up litter, and they're going through the major corridors of the city that are sometimes a challenge for us to sweep. They're hand picking where we can't sweep. And so whether it is them playing a slightly larger role in the short term as we try to grow this department, that's where I see the city stepping up. We are the capital city. I want it to be a place where our residents are proud of, and I think part of that pride comes from cleanliness, well-paved roads, clear street markings, street name signs. These are just things that we're trying to work on that take time, but I think will make a big impact to residents and visitors alike.
I think that's terrific, and I would agree with that wholeheartedly. So, thank you for that. I think that's a vision we share. And I have to say, I have seen the Home Hearth people in my own neighborhood, and they really give a deep clean. And they find themselves, I'm sure, quite often kind of taking trash off private property that private owners are neglecting to take care of. And I think these cleaning days are all terrific. I do think we need to hold these out-of-town and absentee property owners responsible for keeping their clean properties. We're not their housekeepers, and I encourage you to continue working on that. I have to say, for all the hundreds of neighborhood cleanups I've participated in, I've never seen an out-of-town landlord at one. And so we have to make sure that these folks keep their properties clean.
And if I can make a quick point on that
please.
Before your second question, because one of the things that comes into our office is there's this blighted property, there's this bad neighbor. The city needs to go in and clean it up. And there are times where we will go in and clean up private property and then send a bill or attach the bill to the tax bill on the home. There is a process to that. And I know it's very hard for residents when you live next to it and it's day by day, but this is something that starts in development services. They come out, there's a interaction between the inspectors and DDS and the landowner or the homeowner, and it is only at the final step where Public Works receives what we call packets, but it's the full information about what the extent of the cleanup is going to be, the steps that have been taken, what the bill that's going to be assessed is, and only at that point can we enter a private property to mow it or clean it up or whatever the case may be. So unfortunately, it doesn't happen overnight. It is a multi-week, sometimes a couple-month process, which I know can be very frustrating for the residents. But from a DPW standpoint and from a liability standpoint for our employees who are going onto these strange properties we aren't familiar with, we need to make sure that we are taking the appropriate steps. And many times, those conversations that DDS or the health department are having with the landowner or the homeowner, gets the problem taken care of.
Terrific, thank you. Before we started talking, I was flipping through a copy here of the city budget, and I saw in the DPW section that not only do you maintain properties, but you actually renovate and repair some properties, which we in the city always love to see. Are there any properties that DPW right now is renovating that you're particularly pleased with or proud of or glad you finally got around to?
Well, a lot of that runs through the CIP budget and
CIP is?
Capital improvement.
Oh, good, thank you.
And what actually we're very excited about, because in the past few years, Public Works has begun to be responsible for the maintenance of firehouses in the city. And what was found was that the majority, if not all, of the firehouses need major renovations. So it's exciting for us to be a part of the process with the Director of Capital Projects and the Director of Operations, who is Paul Drummy, based out of the Chief Operating Officer's office. It's exciting to be a part of that. We're seeing very old and very historic firehouses that have not only a lot of history, but a lot of pride around them finally being renovated and brought back to their glory. They're going firehouse by firehouse, depending on the greatest need. And I think it's once every 2 years we are fully able to renovate these historic gems that kind of sprinkle around the city.
That's terrific. It's really part of the our patrimony, if you will, as a people in the city of Hartford. So I'm delighted to hear that. Everyone loves a firehouse. Okay, so we have some folks here. Any questions? Yes. Can you say who you are and how, Stan? How will we hear?
There's a mic.
Oh, come up to the mic, please. Oh, good.
Testing. Good online? Okay. Chris, thank you very much for your service to the City of Hartford. I wanted to ask you questions about the flood control system.
Sure.
Okay, so just to ground everybody, we have a $20 million budget for DPW, as Chris said. With our aging flood control infrastructure, the city actually has to pay a lot of those rebuilding costs out of pocket. So I want to know, out of that $20 million, how much do we have to allocate?
Well, we have, right, that $20 million is the general maintenance budget. So that's just mowing and general upkeep, small repairs. Outside of that, we have the CIP budget, right, the capital improvement, and that is where the majority of the dollars are coming to do these renovations that you speak of, like the flood closure structures and the pump stations. I believe in the FY24 budget, about 9-point-something million is going into the final closure structure we have to replace and our pump stations. What's important, I think, for folks to understand are two parts. One is this doesn't have to do with street flooding. This has to do with holding back the Connecticut River and being able to get our stormwater out of the city when the river is at a high elevation in flood stage. The other piece is that we are in a SWIFT right now with the Army Corps of Engineers, and that is, for lack of a better term, that's a consent decree that our flood control system was in such disrepair that we have to meet milestones by particular years to not have the levee and flood control system decertified. By the hard work of Frank Della Ripa, our city engineer, who's also our oversees flood, and his team, we are in the final stages of working our way out of this SWIFT action. So this 9-point-something million, I think it's 9.3 million, that is being invested in the flood control system over this year and will linger into next year, is a great step towards that maintenance. But you're correct, when the Army Corps built these levees and these pump stations, we have 6 pump stations, they buried the Park River, and they built the full levee system. They then handed it over to the city. So it's up to the city to find the funding to maintain it and to make the necessary upgrades or repairs.
Wonderful. So my name is Matt McCarsky. I'm a resident from Frog Hollow. So here's my real question. That's the follow-up. Looking at the Greater Hartford Mobility Study's recommendations and ultimate implementation, especially looking at the proposed interchange north of Riverside Park in that particular area, including the retention pond, does the department see opportunity to, as part of that project, modernize our flood control system? And for me personally, that means taking those pump stations and converting them to electric, whether it's remote controlled, ideally automated. I mean, that would be incredible. It would allow us to right size depending on various stormwater levels. You know, we'd have number of pumps, variable speeds, things like that. It would potentially allow us to eliminate the retention pond, which is valuable real estate. Anything around Riverside Park is valuable real estate for the City of Hartford. It would allow us to potentially increase our tax base in the future. I see every earthen levee as an opportunity to become a concrete wall, which again opens up even more real estate, smaller footprint. The earthen levees are about 80 years old. So there's just a lot of opportunity there to both increase our flood capacity, but also just modernize and make it cheaper for the residents of Hartford who have to pay for that current maintenance in various ways. So I just wanted to ask if there's opportunity for DPW in the long term to come up with a plan in relationship with our DOT partners at the state level to make that as part of the recommendation.
Yeah, and well, what I would say is this, right? That where they're proposing that bridge right now may change, and where it changes is going to impact what happens. That's also right now. It basically goes right over 40 Jennings Road and 50 Jennings Road, which is the operation and administrative centers for Public Works, which there is a master plan for, but who knows when that will rise to the level of priorities. When it comes to the infrastructure you speak to, a standard pump station is costing between 125 and 175 million currently, with an expected lifespan closer to 25 or 30 years instead of the over 100-year lifespan that we have been working with at this time. The other challenge with electric is we need these pump stations to operate regardless of outside conditions, right? They're currently all diesel, big Detroit diesel engines that power these massive pumps and turbines, like you said, from the 1930s, and they have their own independent fuel station and fuel tank to allow them to operate regardless of what's going on in the grid. They are totally independent. So are we open to modernizing them, and do we know we need to modernize them? Absolutely. How we go about modernizing will follow the best practices of the Army Corps of Engineers and of other municipalities around the country. I mean, to your point, some areas, especially down in New Orleans and in Tennessee, we are seeing incredible and just absolutely fascinating pump stations that are coming online. So we're certainly open to that. And just so folks have a sense of the size of these pumps we're talking about, our pumps are over 12 feet tall, and they're down under the floor of the stations where these pump engines are. So it is quite a sight. So we're absolutely open to it, and more importantly, we're open to any opportunity that could allow us to re-envision the city, right? That is incredibly important. If we could get rid of retention ponds, to your point, right, that does decrease some maintenance, but it's going to be based on the best practices. I mean, hell, if we could, I'd love to have a siphon, and so that the river never went above a particular level, but one, I don't know the environmental impacts of that, and two, I don't even want to imagine the cost.
Wonderful. Well, hopefully we can get it using federal funds. So we should talk again sometime. Thank you.
Great.
Great question, Matt. Thank you. I was transported back to New Orleans post-Katrina for a moment there. We don't think of ourselves necessarily as a city that lives behind levees, but we really are. protected by those levees, and we evidently are dealing with a lot of the same issues that places like New Orleans are. Are there any other questions from the audience? Sure. Oh, wonderful. Please stand up and take the podium and tell us who you are.
Hi, Chris.
Hey, Jack.
Carrie, it's good to meet you. I'm Jack Hale.
Oh, you're famous. I've heard of you
Oh,
for
yeah.
years. Okay.
You have no idea. So I live down the street from Chris. Welcome to the neighborhood. I am also chair of the Tree Advisory Commission for the city, and I have various other entanglements, but the Southwest Behind the Rocks NRZ. I just want to give you, Chris, a chance to tell everyone how important the city's trees are and how that fits into the work you do.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Thank you for that question, Jack. I was negligent in not raising it, so.
Well, and I'm smiling because I'm a licensed arborist.
Oh.
So I was a member of the Tree Commission, working with Jack, but long before I took this role. And our tree canopy is absolutely incredibly important to the health of our city. You know, I was in a meeting with our sanitation team earlier this week, and I had listened to an interview of the former recycling czar of New York City. And what he said in his interview was, our sanitation team doesn't realize that they save lives every day. That modern sanitation is the greatest health breakthrough in 125 years. And I feel like where we're moving is our tree canopy is going to be seen that way in the future. We as a city are losing trees to either extreme weather or homeowner preferences at an alarming rate. And what is happening, and I'm sure many of the people in this room or folks online know that, you know, we're dealing with what's called an urban heat island effect. Mm-hmm. And that's basically the sun's rays reflect off of the asphalt, which then raises the temperature in urban settings. And our thinnest tree canopies are in our poorest neighborhoods. So they're hotter, the air quality is worse, and they lack the aesthetic beauty as well of tree-lined streets. So where I am hopeful and excited is the work that was done by the Tree Commission and the previous administration to secure a $6 million grant. It's a USDA-based grant. It's an IRA tree grant to plant trees throughout the city, specifically in neighborhoods where our tree canopy is the thinnest. And I'm excited for that opportunity because we fall woefully short of the city's adopted goal of planting 1,500 trees a year. You know, last year I think we planted 200 and change. So we need to get better at it. My hope is that this 4-year grant now will be a catalyst that pushes us in the right direction. But as a part of that, we're going to need homeowner participation. There is not enough public property, one, to impact the streets enough to mitigate that heat island effect, and there isn't just enough property in general to plant the number of trees we need to plant. We're going to need residents and homeowners to also see the value in these trees so that they can use their property as a little piece of the overall solution.
And how are you doing outreach to these homeowners? Because I know when I first moved back to Hartford 5 years ago, We were talking with DPW about it, and we were trying to figure out, I know DPW was really struggling looking for homeowners to participate. Trees are, you know, quite valuable. We plant a lot of trees over at the Zion Hill Cemetery, and a nice sized, healthy tree, maybe, you know, 7 or 8 feet tall, is $250. So the fact that the city has these trees to give, I'm assuming, to homeowners who are willing to plant them and care for them so they don't die. How are you getting the word out?
Sure, and so I think there are two pieces here. The first piece is that the grant that was originally applied for was $35 million.
Wow.
The city was awarded $6. And so currently, the city is in the process of working with USDA to firm up exactly what the $6 million will cover from the original $35 million ask. I want to give credit to not only Jack and the Tree Commission, but also former director Mike Looney, because Mike put into the budget, prior to my arrival, a tree planting coordinator within our forestry division. And so we are in the process of working with HR currently to have a approved and negotiated job spec with the unions so that we can hire someone to be just that, be the outreach coordinator for the urban canopy within DPW. Because right now, what has happened is our city forester, who wears a lot of hats, has also had to be the outreach coordinator. So we're excited to get this position into DPW and into the forestry division so we can begin to have those community conversations as this grant becomes finalized and we know what goals and what trees we're going to be able to provide.
That's terrific. And regarding the cutting down of trees, what are the rules around that? Because I know that there have been some...
Absolutely. So the rule is any tree over 12 inches in diameter requires a permit to be obtained by the homeowner through the forestry division.
Before it is cut down?
Before it is cut down.
Okay, that's very good to know, because we've seen some big trees go down in our neighborhood. And granted, trees have a lifespan also, and sometimes
Absolutely.
they have to come down, but we hate to see them come down because someone thinks that they're messy or something like that.
And to put on my arborist hat
Yeah,
instead
please.
of my DPW
Put it
hat,
on.
I would just also tell residents and homeowners who are watching, if you are going to remove a tree, please go through the process, but then also use a licensed and insured company to do the work.
Right.
Because it is very dangerous work. You want experts who know what they're doing, and God forbid something happens to your home or your property, you want to make sure that they are insured. And I will also say that arborists are trained to figure out if a tree actually needs to come down as well. Sometimes a prune will save the tree and meet a homeowner's needs, and usually be cheaper than doing a full removal.
Right, right. It's very good advice. We only have a few minutes left. Are there any more questions from the audience? If not, I'm going to launch into just one of my favorite topics, which is cemeteries. The City of Hartford owns 5 cemeteries. And they're all very old and very, very historic, and a challenge. I've had the privilege of working really closely with DPW and with Mark Dowd on the cemeteries, and with Mike Looney before, and we've really had a great experience. And interestingly, one of the innovations, if you will, came from Mike Mendez, who approached the cemeteries differently with staffing and decided that rather than have a team sort of travel around, migrate, you know, through the 6 lawn growing months and going here, once here, he has divided up the team and he's kind of placed them at these cemeteries. The problem, of course, with cemeteries is Zion Hill Cemetery is a 24-acre cemetery in the middle of a bustling urban neighborhood. And by having the staff sort of report there, rather than a team of 10 moving around, having 2 at each cemetery, report in the morning, see what the situation is, tend to things, it has really improve the situation. We also had a terrific relationship with the city forester, and she helped us get, probably we put in over 60 trees or so at this point. Can you talk a little bit about the cemeteries and touch on citizen resident participation, not only in helping to maintain the cemeteries, but also helping to maintain the parks and other things, because it really does take a joint effort.
Yeah, and I'm happy you brought up Mike Mendez. He's
Great guy.
He is the crew leader for the cemeteries team, which is a part of the Parks Division. And you're right, he took a new and creative approach and is a real valued member of our team. We're lucky to have him. And I think he doesn't like to be in the spotlight, but it's nice when we can highlight his efforts, for sure. And what I'll start with, there is a challenge in the city too, because we have our 5 cemeteries, but there are also a number of private cemeteries that are private property that sometimes abut the city cemeteries that we do not have the ability to maintain, help go onto the property. So there are some challenges and misconceptions around there, because that's an important distinction, I think, that needs to be made. Now, in general, with our parks and with our cemeteries, litter continues to be a problem. Monday mornings in some of our parks, our lawn mowing crews don't start the day by hopping on the mower. They grab a backpack leaf blower and they blow all the trash out of the grass into the internal roadways of the parks to then collect it. And usually that takes a couple hours prior to being able to start mowing. So it always starts with residents pack in or pack out what you brought in, or use the trash receptacles that are throughout the parks. That's part one. Part two, I would say, is activity helps improve the places we have. And what I would say to residents is these cemeteries are very historic and they're very beautiful, and it is a great safe place during the day to take a walk, you know, where you don't have to worry about vehicular traffic. The more eyes and the more, you know, boots on the ground, if you will, in all of our parks and cemeteries help raise the level of maintenance in them. Something I didn't mention that I should mention here is how to communicate with Public Works. Because as someone who was a resident, it's important for me to feel that the residents have that open line of communication. You know, the 311 line and the new 311 app, which is now available for iPhones and Android phones, is up and running. That's a great way to receive a case number and actually be able to track what is happening with your particular concern. But people should not hesitate if 311, either they're not comfortable with it or they have something that doesn't really fit with 311, they should call the main line for DPW, which is 860-757-9900, because Vanessa, who is the administrative assistant for DPW, that is her direct phone line. If she is at her desk and she's not on the phone, she will answer, she will call you back. It's not a trick to get you to call an empty mailbox.
Right.
She is always more than happy to try to answer people's questions and point them in the right direction if it's not a DPW issue.
That's terrific, Chris. Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming here today. This has been really informative. I'd like to turn it back to Marion.
Yes, and I'd like to make a comment. Jack Hale talked about the tree canopy and the need for more trees. You talked about the cemeteries and the parks. But these are green spaces, and we need more green spaces and to help mitigate the climate impact in terms of the heat. So any thoughts and comments on how we can use maybe some of the vacant properties to help with that?
Well, from a public works standpoint, the less vacant city-owned properties, the better. And I think that's citywide. Residents don't want to have that sort of situation next to their homes. Right. So that's the easy part. Where I think it becomes a challenge is where it always becomes a challenge, which is around maintenance. And you know, I said it earlier in the discussion that the department used to be over 400 strong. We're currently budgeted at 232 positions. It's finding a way to increase that green space while also increasing the workforce to maintain it. There's nothing worse than a unmaintained, you know, home or green space. So it is that balancing act. I think the other thing which would be great would be to better connect our green spaces. You know, by geography, you know, we have, by percentage, more green space than the average city. I agree it's not enough, but I also feel that, you know, how can we connect neighborhoods to their green spaces to have a better impact? But more green space sounds good to me.
Exactly, and you just made me think of the community gardens that some of those vacant properties have been used for. So that's another beneficial use to also provide food for residents in the neighborhood. So, well, I'd like to thank both Carrie and Chris for this informative discussion. I learned a lot today. I thought I knew things, but I learned a lot. And I hope you did as well. To let you know, the next episodes of It's Our City series will be Jeffrey Walker, the Director of Department of Development Services, and that's on November 2nd, and Christina Baldwin, Director of the Department of Family, Children, and Youth, on November 16th. We'd also like to thank Hartford Foundation for Public Giving for helping us make this event possible, and also for our program committee from Hartford NEXT, and to none other than Stan McCauley, Lighthouse Productions, for helping us to make this a live event. If you'd like to join our mailing list, you may visit our website at www.hartfordnext.org and sign up for our newsletter, where we provide information on community happenings, NRZ happenings, anything that would be important for residents to know. And you all may also email us at HNXT at hartfordnext.org. So again, thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you at future episodes of It's Our City. The purpose is to help us understand better what our departments do for us and what we should be doing as well to help our city to be more vibrant and a great place to live with a great quality of life. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.